Spotlight, lectures and performances on and around Albany State University.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? Yes, I'm Genetta Johnson. I'm the program manager for the OEF, OIF, OND Clinic. Those acronyms mean Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation New Dawn. Operation New Dawn now is all the activity going on in North Africa. And I speak to you not only as a professional, I've been a social worker for 39 years. I'm the mother of twin sons who have a total of 7 deployments between them. One returned from Kuwait, March 20th. The family have not been able to see him yet because he's been into debriefings. His twin brother was retired medically from the Army 2 years ago for PTSD. So, Mr. Johnson was saying what women have to do to protect their sons. Well, I'm one of those warrior moms. I wrote the president. I flew to Texas, and I talked with my local congressman to get my son retired out on PTSD. They tried to deploy him 7 times, and the last time his commanding officer said, the only way that you will not be deployed, you have to call in dead. Okay, one encounter I had with the local elected officials, from January to March of 2005, both of them was in theater in Iraq. And I said, these are my only children, so can you move one of them out of theater? They said no. One would have to be dead or diagnosed as schizophrenia to move them, because one of them was military intelligence at that time, and the squad he was with, there were only 13 of those J-Star planes in the country. So I had to tear that letter up and still go back and hear calls from the battlefield when my son said, "Mom, I'm all right." And how they're screaming and hollering and shouting and shooting in the background, 3 a.m. in the morning. And then the next morning I read in the media that this was Tikrit and the enemy overran the air base and only 8 soldiers lost their life. Well, that wasn't true. He came home and he said, you know, it was a pitched battle. We had to really fight down to the wire for everyone to be wiped out. I'm giving you that background because when I work with the male and females that come into my office, and our job, this clinic was put up to help case manage the new soldiers through the VA system. The VA is a huge bureaucracy. The medical center where I work, VBA, which is the compensation, the pension, and all the adaptive housing, wounded warriors, and the cemetery. But when I see these individuals come into my office, I know I lived the life of being a family member of someone with PTSD and then service members. So my staff and I, and in fact, all of my staff are veterans except myself. We try to give them the individualized attention and also the professional attention they need. We are supposed to case manage them into getting to the services they need, and then we also have a caregiver support program, which is a part of my clinic. These are the soldiers who have been seriously ill, seriously injured, and they are being cared for by family or friends. And this is a stipend program, which means the caregiver is paid to take care of this soldier, so they will not be on a long-term care unit in a VA hospital or in a community nursing home. And of course, this is scrutinized by Congress because Congress is the ultimate boss for the VA. And we have lost 2 veterans, and when we say lost, because once you start working with them, you feel like they are family, and it becomes hard on the caregiver support group because that group also provides support to the spouse or whomever is caring for this veteran, because it's a very strenuous thing to be. This is not the person that you married, so they came home different. They came home injured. You have young children, and we even have some of the poor caregivers, which are wives. They have taken in the mother of the service member, their own mother, taking care of the kids and taking care of the service member. So we are trying to keep the caregiver whole and safe. And that was the purpose of the caregiver program. Congress and this administration has been very supportive of the soldiers and created a lot of new programs and extended programs of educational benefits for the service members. The PTSD is important because it was added to, in 1980, it was added to the DSM-3, the third edition of the DSM-3. It has been revised in 1987, 1998. When the DSM-5 come out about June 1st, I'm sure it's going to have another revision. But this allowed the diagnosis of PTSD to be made and the etiology be outside of the individual. Normally, people think of PTSD from normal life, like divorce, separation, death, rape, or whatever, but they think it's something weak within the individual. But when they realize that the PTSD from something as horrific as combat, then the person is not held responsible, so they can look at that in a different light and also create different treatment for it. Ms. Howell did mention that the CBT, the MDR, and the prolonged exposure. But we're also doing things, the VA is getting more into alternative treatment as well, and some of DOD. There are over 300 different methods for yoga, and they have one now called Warriors Yoga. It's helped them to relax and also to move into another level of psychological functioning. There's the art therapy, there's the music therapy, there is acupuncture, acupressure, and chiropractic science. All these things now are being utilized to help the veterans who have the diagnosis of PTSD, or sometimes just to help them who have the physical injuries as well. We see a number of veterans, by the time they get to my clinic, they have the diagnosis of traumatic brain injury. Because of the IEDs and the explosions, a number of the veterans will say, I don't remember passing out. So when you're asking what is the stressor, if they don't have someone in the unit that can say, yes, you were out for 5 minutes or you were out for 2 hours, you ask them that question and they'll say that it's mild, but it may be actually longer than that. Some of them recover because they're getting individual treatment. Some of them, it's not until later, and the spouse or the children are saying, you know, you went to the store. One veteran gave me he came in 2 nights after he came off active duty, and he was a financial counselor. And he started losing his business because he thought he was the same. But even when he went to the store to get bread and milk for his new baby, he would forget what he went to get. So if you're a financial advisor and you can't remember anything, and then his clientele began to drop off, and that's what made him come into the office. So a lot of times you have to talk with the family, friends, and work associates around the veteran to see a difference, because they think they are still functioning the way they did. And the reason I want to stress this is a lot of the Georgia National Guard, they go into theater and they come back into their civilian jobs, and they may have 4 or 5 deployments, but each time they come back, they are different. And some of them have lost their jobs because they cannot maintain those jobs, or the employer will find some reason saying, well, you're a little different, and they will say, well, you came back this time, well, we don't have room for you, although it's a national law that you're supposed to hold the job for the veteran who is a reservist or guards person when they return from theater. That causes a number of the psychosocial problems that we deal with as social workers. That include homelessness. I have some information out on the table about being incarcerated. In fact, we have, there are jail diversion programs now. There's one in Savannah. There's a veterans court being opened in Macon, because they end up in the behavior, they end up in the penal system, and then this is not the place for them. They need treatment. And I'm not saying that everyone that has PTSD is going to end up there, no. And some people go to jail and say they have PTSD, and that's not so either. You always have to weed through that. That's our job as a social worker to do that. And many of the VAs are now having justice veteran outreach workers, and those are LCSWs or LMSWs, because you need a background to go into the prison to assess the person, to work with maybe the judge or the attorney, and also to get that person into a treatment program. Many of the judges would like to court order them for treatment, but the VA, you cannot court order a person to the VA for mental health or PTSD treatment. Although we have those programs, they must voluntarily come. And so it becomes a fight. And I say that because I'm working a case now. This young man was a prisoner of war. We used to think of prisoner of war for Vietnam, World War II, but he was actually put inside of a barrel that had been split open and closed up into the barrel. But he managed to fight his way out, and he killed 7 people in the process. So he's totally destroyed psychologically, just being shut up in the barrel in the middle of the desert. So he is in jail now. He assaulted his wife, then he assaulted his girlfriend after his marriage broke up, because if you wake a person up and they're having a flashback or they're dreaming of this situation, they're coming out fighting. So this is what happened. But because of the pattern of behavior, he had assaulted someone before, the judge is not buying it. So his attorney, myself, we've been going back and forth. Okay, what program can we get him into? I said, okay, we will take him if she will let, the judge is a female, if she will let him come and not be on the court order. And she's saying, no way. So the poor veteran is sitting in jail. And every time his attorney present a case, I said, we can take him on this condition. The judge is not buying it. So it's a stalemate right now. But of course, the judge is winning because he's still in jail. But this is hard on the veteran because we see that he could, make progress. And this is not a person that was out when you do the psychosocial assessment. He was employed. His family is supporting him. And he has a lot of things in place for him. But the judge is looking at it differently. Although we sent in reports from the psychologist, we even, the family hired a private psychiatrist that once worked for the VA to do an assessment. The intake social worker on mental health, we sent in that report, but the judge is not budging on this. So it becomes very complicated. We are there for the veterans. We are supposed to catch them when they leave DOD, and we do our best. My clinic, with a total of 4 people, we have 5,000 people enrolled for new veterans in Carl Vinson VA Medical Center, and that's one VA medical center that serves 52 counties in southern Georgia. So if you multiply this, it's huge. By the time the drawdown complete, there will be 1 million new veterans that the VA hospital system must take care of. And that's across the country, including Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and the Philippines. To the PTSD portion, we have a program. We can take a person in as soon as possible. We also have a suicide prevention coordinator that will work to get these individuals in. Also, the new veterans will get preference for admission over the more established veterans. Because we have a limited number of beds, we are allowed to do that. The veterans do not always come. This is another question that was from the audience, from Ms. Howell. They can come as soon as they are off active duty, but some of them, they think they can hold it together. They don't want to be a burden on their family. They don't want to be a burden on society. They go back to work, and they work, and they crash and burn. We have, our clinic went up in 2003. This is now 10 years later, and then all of a sudden we'll see a guy that come in and say, yeah, I got out in 2005. Why didn't we see you before? I thought I could do it for myself. So we start the groundwork of helping that individual, and we do not penalize that individual. Some of the things that's happening with the criteria is hard to take, because for people coming off active duty, first 6 months they get all free dental at the VA. But if they're delayed in doing that, unless they have a maxillofacial injury, then they have lost that benefit, or unless they get compensation for it. Compensation also laws have been changed. If a person has been discharged into a theater of combat, even though they may not have sufficient medical documentation to support it, can apply for VA compensation. Also, people who get an other than honorable discharge, we are working with a lot of those individuals to upgrade those discharges. To be serviced in the VA hospital system, you must have an honorable discharge. There seems to be a high number of people coming out because of alcohol or drug problems are given other than honorable or honorable under general conditions. So we work with the elected officials, Department of Army or Navy or whomever we need to upgrade those discharges, because people don't realize that if a person get an other than honorable, which is the same as a dishonorable discharge, it basically shuts you down in society. Many employers will not hire veterans who have a dishonorable discharge. And they cannot be serviced in the VA hospital system. They have no income, so they end up a part of the homeless population. So there's a lot of legal work that our office do in order to help whatever we need to do, even if we don't know how to do it. But that's the job of social workers. We find the resources, we do the research to see how we can help these individuals, and that's the purpose of our clinic, because many of them come and they don't know. They simply don't know. Although we do the yellow ribbon events where people are being discharged back home, we go to Fort Stewart, wherever we need to go, and greet the soldiers and explain our services to them. But sometimes all that is missed because of all the things that are going on. People who need the home modifications, people who need all the health appliances, people who need even if you don't qualify for the caregiver support program, we also have the homebound and the aid and attendance program. So there are many, many things within the VA hospital system and the benefits that can help the veterans, but it's such a huge bureaucracy, you can easily get lost. Our hospital is so big that you can walk from the parking lot in the outpatient area and get lost before you get to the next building. So we are there, and what we call a warm handoff. If the person need to go, we will walk them to the next clinic. We will even call Hawaii if they need to transfer out there to make sure there's a continuity of care. And the PTSD, I know this is supposed to be 101, but it's hard. And speaking as a mother of a son with PTSD, I was in college during Vietnam, and I remember the girls in Holden Hall, some of them crying and being taken out of the hall because they had the service number of their boyfriends and fiancés. As they called up the draft on television, they just passed out. Their RAs and everybody had to come and get them. And over the years, I've seen how working in the system, I was in the community 14 years before I went to the VA. And then I had cousins who served, first male cousins who served in Vietnam, uncles who served in World War II and Korea. And now they have two sons to service in this conflict. PTSD was called shell shock. People learn how to work with their individual family members, but when we talk about the earlier conflicts, and Mr. Johnson, you're right on this, the family was more intact. So many of the World War II veterans with PTSD, shell shock, did not start having symptoms until 40 years later when their wife died, all their children were grown, and all of their grandchildren were grown, and then they were by themselves, and all of a sudden all these things come back to them. The same thing happened with Korea. Vietnam, those of you who are old enough to remember, some of those guys were actually spit on when they came back, and they were still on the tarmac at the airport. So this compounded the PTSD. It was also compounded by 99% of them were drafted, so they were sent to war against their wishes. And then they come home and they are to raise a family, to be a part of a family, and these issues were never addressed. Some of them could not get services in the VA hospital because of how the rules were set up at that time. And I had one young man, and you kind of wonder about this psychic of humans. He joined the military because he was sick of hearing his father talk about Vietnam his entire life. I said, excuse me? He said, that's all I ever heard. I said, so why are you in the military? But somehow that was getting away, that was running away. That was getting away from the situation. And there's a lot of comorbidity with the PTSD because I have worked with people who join the Army or the military to get away from violent households. One young man, when he went for his, to be recruited, his nose was broken where his father had hit him. Then he goes and he's immediately sent to Vietnam. So what do you think came back to the USA? So there's a lot to go with PTSD. There's a lot of comorbidity that's there before the individuals go to the military. It's acquired in the military, the military sexual trauma, and this also affects males because many of them, particularly in confined areas on Navy ships, have been gang raped. So you're dealing with the PTSD, and you're dealing with this military sexual trauma, and we also have treatment for that, and that comes under the mental health umbrella in the Department of Veterans Affairs as well. So there are a lot of issues that you are dealing with when you're dealing with the PTSD. And these people, you know, many of them are reaching out with both hands. They want to be fathers, they want to be husbands, they want to be wives, they want to be workers, they want to be leaders. So they are not all, sometimes when I read in the media, people think, and some of the people will stay away from the VA because they think it's charity, they think it's welfare. I said, you went to war, you fought for this country, you put your life on the line. This is not charity, this is not welfare, this is not entitlement. But these people are not standing in line for a check. What they want is life. And we do a lot of work with faith and religious organizations because many of the soldiers coming back, they start questioning life and start looking for spiritual. They start looking for religion. And I can also say that for my sons, one of them is a captain and a chaplain in the Army. His twin brother was always a party dude, but when he came back from his third deployment, he started going to church every Sunday. So it's a difference. When you're dealing with life and death situation, it's a difference. And because they have been in such an intense conflict, when they walk into the VA, they know who care and they know who don't care. And I'm saying that to you as a social worker, to fellow social workers and social workers who are going to be. If you don't care about people, please do not be in the profession. Because as I say, people will walk in. These soldiers, male and female, will walk in and they are looking at you and they can judge you 100 miles away. Because they have been in such an intense situation, they have seen people dying around them, they have been injured, they have been blown up. They have a whole different, so you're looking at a 22-year-old, but you're talking to a 50-year-old. So they can see the difference. And you need to have a heart, not a bleeding, crying, but you need to have a heart. Respect them as individuals and be there to help them, not to downgrade them or make them dependent, because what they're wanting to do is get on with their life. I hear that at least every day I'm at work. Ma'am, fix me, I just want to get on with my life. So PTSD can be very stressful. I like to say, I'm thankful that my daughter-in-law has hung in there with my son because it's very stressful. We have books for children, we have couples counseling, we have the individual counseling, we even have retreats. But PTSD is very, very hard on the family. And if you have someone in your family, I don't care the etiology of the PTSD, I'm not saying the whole family unit should be sacrificed to that individual, but extend some understanding, because sometimes just some understanding will solve a lot of issues. I have not been allowed to see my son to just return. I won't see him until the end of the month. But if any of you, the parents of twins, okay, you understand the psychology of twins. And when they've been separated like this, you know, it becomes, I don't know, what do you say? I think the parents become secondary because it's like a half of them are missing. And I got the call. Of course, he called his brother before he called me. But if they ask you to be supportive and they ask me to come visit them, they don't live in Georgia like I do, I immediately called my supervisor and said, I need 5 days off because I'm going to Tennessee and the other one from Pennsylvania will be here. Because if they reach out and ask for help, please be there for them. That makes a lot of difference. Many of the people, and I can't give you the percentages, but at least 60% of them who commit suicide and have a diagnosis of PTSD, they do not have a support system. So sometimes just sitting, the last time I saw my son that's retired out, we spent time just driving down the street. I did not lecture him. I was not a therapist. I was not mommy, but I was mother, listening. And when we talked about some things, and he is under treatment, he goes to the psychiatrist every 60 days. And then he has some other anger management he's also doing. But just sitting, talking to him, and basically just being a sounding board, listening to him. And I answered 2 questions for him. And all of a sudden, he called his wife and said, I love you. I didn't know they had been having problems because of his anger. She didn't say it, and he didn't say it. But just giving him 2 answers. And then before I left, I saw them just sitting at the table, laughing and talking to each other. So it doesn't have to be anything dramatic, but you just need to be non-judgmental, listen, and be there. And that's the best therapy and ministry and parenting that you can do, or even if it's your brother or your sister or whomever that may have PTSD, that's the best kind of love and attention that you can give that individual. And you may save a marriage, you may save a home, and you know, these people are part of society and they just want to be a part of society. I have some books, benefit books, and a few other things on the table outside. Please take those. As I say, if you have family members or if you want to use it for yourself, you know, take those, and they can be also a resource material, because many people do not realize the huge amount of benefits that are available to the veterans and their families. Thank you.